Are you working on your author career but struggling to get that first book published? Does the goal of being an author seem too lofty? Or thoughts of having multiple books and making a full-time living are as fantastical as living in Cinderella's castle? Welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where aspiring authors can be heard. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have gotten their foot on the author career path. Hear what they've done to get there and where they want to go now. Settle back. It's time for a bit of inspiration and advice. Come listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
Today, I'm talking to Ran, who comes from the Great White North up in Canada, and it's very cold the day we talk. She discusses a book she was involved in, not something she wrote, but it's something her grandfather wrote over 30 years ago, and it hasn't been published, hadn't seen the light of day till recently when Ran was involved with it. It sounds like a great story with her grandfather's journey from World War II and his life, and it's a memoir. And then Ran used that for the inspiration to get going on her books. So she has her own stories coming out now. So it's a great listen to. It's a great thing to check out. If you enjoy those types of books with memoirs, please go check her book out. Let her know what you think of it. And here's Ran. Great. And with me today, I've got Ran. Welcome, Ran. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And so to get started, let's find out a little bit about you. Who you are, where you're from, a bit about your background, some things you like to do besides writing, that type of thing.
Okay, so I write under the moniker Ran Weingartner. I live in a small town in Northern Ontario, Canada, where it's currently minus 17 Celsius. It's really cold. Usually it's kind of it's bittersweet because the sun is shining, but usually when the sun is shining, that means it's bitterly cold out there. So you got to take the good with the bad, I guess.
So it's a good day to cuddle up and read a book.
Yep, that is right. Absolutely. Currently, so I have a day job. I'm the office manager at a mental health clinic. And I'm actually, for one of the fewer times throughout my working life, I'm actually really enjoying my day job. So that's a win. In terms of things that I do outside of writing, because writing is really my primary focus. It's what I love to do above anything else. But I love playing board games with friends and family. That's really taken a hit in this past year. We're trying to figure out ways of doing it remotely, but it's difficult. Spending time with my dog, Charlie, and baking sourdough bread. Like, the tactile experience of that is a completely new discovery for me. I'm not domesticated in the least, but I am loving just the experience of making sourdough bread, and every loaf is different.
Well, that's cool. I've got another friend that I actually do another podcast with, and he loves to bake bread, but he has found he's diabetic now, and bread is not a good thing. So he's taking a hit on that. What type of board games do you like to play?
So my whole gaming career started with Catan. So anything, right? Like any board game that is designed with a nice mix of chance, right? You gotta roll that dice, and you don't know what you get, but also strategy and the ability to play the hand that you're dealt, right? Like, so if you get a really crappy rolls and you get really crappy resources, how can you turn that around for yourself? I just love that. So we have a cabinet. It's a huge, like, floor to ceiling cabinet full of board games. And like, we're going to have to start thinning it out because there's just so many games. Eventually, we're going to have to sell some.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I used to, the card game Magic.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that one?
Hmm.
I used to deal with Magic cards, buy, sell, trade, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And when I kind of stopped doing that, I took all the cards to a local game store and traded them in for store credit. So we literally have almost like $2,000 worth of board games.
Wow. That's
So
awesome.
I'll have to shoot you over a couple suggestions if you haven't played
Yeah,
after this.
absolutely. Absolutely. We should compare notes for sure.
Yeah, and my wife has gotten into some of the ones that she didn't think she'd get into. So there's quite a few good ones out there nowadays.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. I just got Carcassonne um, in for my birthday in the summer, and we've been playing it. I think it's the same game designer as Catan, but it's a little bit different. And it's. I didn't think I'd like that. I resisted that one for the longest time, but we're really enjoying it. And you can play it with two players, which is great during a pandemic. When you
Yes,
only have a
yes.
household of two.
One that we got a couple years ago that we enjoy, though it is more fun with more people. It's called
Yeah.
Camel Up. It's
Yes.
basically your rate betting on camel race. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a
With
good one.
camels that go backwards too. Yeah, that's a good one. We've enjoyed that one a lot.
Yes,
It's hard to find
cool.
games.
Um,
It's hard to find games for people like we had another couple that we would play with, and there's lots of really good games for four people, right? But then we added
mhm.
another couple, and then it was hard to find games so you could play six players or more. And Camel Up was definitely one of them. It was a really good time.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You hit a stage where games that are good for up to four people are not as good
Yeah,
for bigger groups. And then you have all these other games sitting around that you can't really play unless you have five or more people.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So, when you decided to start writing and make that a big passion, what made you want to start writing?
So gosh, I think I wrote my first story at maybe I was 6 or 7. Um, and I think I just love the escape from reality. Like I just love, I mean, I think, it was through the looking glass, the whole idea that you could take a household object like a mirror and that there was a whole fantastical world beyond that mirror. Just, I've never gotten over that. Like I'm still in awe of that concept. So I think for me, it's been less about, um, you know, a moment where I decided to write, and it's something that's always been with me, like the idea of creating stories, delving in stories, being in stories. Like I love television, I love books, I love audiobooks, I love the theater, anything that basically anything that can take me out of my daily life. I'm up for it. I'm absolutely up for it. But I would say if there was a turning point for me, it was this past year when I turned 50. Um, I turned 50 and I thought, what do I want to do with the next, assuming like if I'm lucky, I have maybe another 25 years. So what do I want to really focus on? What do I want to spend my free time doing? Free in quotation marks, right? Because you never have enough of that. And
Right.
and that was really when I was like, you know the answer to this. You absolutely know the answer to this. You've got to devote more time to that passion that really ignites your imagination and essentially is kind of that's what I'm here for. Like I feel like this is what I was meant to do. And and so it set me on this journey. And you know what, since I've committed to getting up at an ungodly hour in the morning, and writing every day, and writing every day. Oh, this has been years in coming. Writing every day, I just find that whenever I have a question like, hey, what could I do? What could I do with this plot point? Or I wonder who I can show this story to, or whatever the case may be, the answer just comes. Like someone appears, someone goes on a Slack channel that I'm a member of and goes, hey, just in case anybody was wondering, this is what I've been playing with, or resources come. Anything like that. I mean, yeah, I was thinking of doing a podcast, and then you started, posting a bunch of things about like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm starting my podcast. And I just was like, this is it. Like, this is, if there was any confirmation from the universe that I'm on the right track, this is
Yes.
it.
I was almost going to say that exact same thing. Agreed. I had, I had been thinking about some stories for literally 4 years,
Yeah.
without doing anything about it. And then within the space of a couple weeks, multiple things came at me that like pushed me towards actually writing. So I said, well, I better take my cue and listen to the universe.
Yes. Yes. Awesome.
So tell us about your book and what made you want to write this book.
So I have two books that are still in production. Okay, so
Okay,
one is a
good.
novel that I started, my God, like a million years ago, um, and but I'm determined to finish it. But what I set myself as a goal for 2021 is to write short stories, because I really want to work on my craft. I kind of answered the call for to write a short story for an anthology, and I just learned so much from just doing that quick turnaround, that 2,500 word, start, middle, and end. That I just thought I want more of that. Like I want to learn more of that. So that's what I'm doing for 2021, and I'm hoping that by the end of 20, I'm not hoping, by the end of 2021, I will have short stories to publish, and to publish a collection of. Um, but if I may, I'd like to plug today a book that I was involved in, but that I was not the author of. So is that all
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's what
So,
I like, getting books out there that anyone listening may not have heard of. So this is perfect.
yeah. So this is kind of a labor of love. So this is my grandfather's memoirs. Okay.
Oh,
Now, he's
okay.
been gone 30 years. Like this goes back way back to World War II. The book is called Journey of Faith Across a Turbulent Century. And the tagline is Memoirs of a Refugee Pastor. And I did a Google search the other day. Memoirs of a Refugee Pastor takes you directly to his Amazon sales page, and it's it reads like part thriller, part romance. He was a medic in World War II. This was like in Yugoslavia. It's a country that doesn't even exist anymore. And just watching, so here he is. He's got his family established, and he's got his wife, and he's got his four kids, and there's this slow descent into World War II that happens, and you know it's so you have that first hand, like first person account of what it's like to watch kind of the machinery build up, right? And then World War I or World War II happens. People are scattered. They don't have a country anymore. They flee. There's like and then at one point my grandmother and my grandfather are separated, and they have no idea where each other is. They do get reunited, so there is a happy ending on that front. But it's really like for a memoir, it's been really interesting to read it. It really speaks to the resilience of the human spirit and how much we can tolerate, right? Which I think is really what we need to be reading at this time. Um, I think some of us thought maybe 2020 good riddance. And 2020
Right.
started off with a bang, So when I was doing some copy editing and some line editing, and it was really helpful for me to just be reminded that as a species, we've survived and we've prevailed. Um, and what is it? Like, what are those ingredients, right? What is it that makes, because he does have some tragic stories of people who just gave up, people who just it was too much. It was too much. And but what did we do? Like, what did people do to help each other through some of that despair and give each other the courage to keep going?
Like you said, it's kind of like history repeats itself, or
Mhm.
with what's going on now. So your grandfather wrote this how long ago?
So he finished writing it in the 80s. Like like he died in the early 90s. And he had three sons, my two uncles and my dad, who thought we need to make this available for his grandchildren and his great grandchildren. So they started translating it. And when my dad retired, he took it on as a whole project. So it wasn't just the translating of his notebooks that he carried, in the trenches and across these long marches across Europe. It wasn't just that, but he put some historical context to some of them. So when you're reading it, you're getting a sense of like what was happening in the historical moments, in the big, what governments were doing, and then have that larger context with what the people on the ground were experiencing. And that took a lot of work, lots of tracking down photographs and putting them in. So if you're a history buff, this is really the way to go. So it's been
So
like a
it was kind
labor
of,
of love from the whole family, getting
yeah, I
involved.
was just going to say that. Yeah. Were you involved with helping this, or are you just interested in reading it now because you're wanting to write?
I thought that's what it was, but my dad and I have worked together. We've written together, and he really asked me for my help in terms of some copy editing, writing the blurb. I'm more dialed into how to market books these days. How to. So I got to weigh in on a lot of that, and I read it. Did some line editing as well. Made sure all the footnotes matched, and the wording was right and it wasn't too repetitive and so on. So all that kind of work I was lucky enough to get involved with.
Nice. So, I mean, it's obviously a family labor of love, but it also gave you a little experience to see how things went. Do you think that has helped you with the what you're working on?
Absolutely. I mean, everything helps, right? Every experience that you have. And I mean, for people who are listening, like if you're a writer and you do even something like you write the brochures, the marketing brochures or the informational brochures for your day job, that helps, right? Like it's all
Right.
practice. It's all practice. What I would take away from it, because again, I've had experience doing that work and even doing that work professionally, but what I hadn't had experience with is releasing a book. Like usually, I've ghost written books. Once it's done, I pass it on, right? And then it's like another team that publishes it, that does the marketing, that does everything. Like my job is done. With this one though, I got to we went with a hybrid publisher, and so they did a lot of the boots on the ground work, but there were a lot of decision points that they came back to us with, and said, do you want to go this track? Do you want to go this track? What are your plans are? How do you see it going? And I got to be involved with that, and that is definitely going to be helping me when I release my own book. Yeah.
And I think that's Well, I was going to mention that helping work on a book of someone else's gives you that experience, gives you a little self confidence. So when you're working on your own book, I know a lot of authors start getting fearful. Oh, how will I get this published? Will I
Yeah.
get it out? And is anyone going to read it? And that, so some of that fear was taken away from you. So do you think that's helping you with the books you are working on publishing yourself?
Yes, 100%. And I've heard this is a theme that has come back to me recently. Writing can be a really solitary venture, right? You're in your own mind,
Yeah.
right? You're in your own brain a lot of the time. And sometimes that means you're in really bad company, right? You had an episode that I really appreciated from your podcast on self-doubt. And, and that, those beasts, at 6 o'clock in the morning when you're writing your crappy first draft, or you're like just writing, getting the words out, and you're thinking, why am I even doing this? Right? Like, is this ever going to become anything? Like, this is so much work, right? Why do I even do this?
Right.
But when you're co-writing, or when you're working on someone else's project and they have those self-doubts, you're like, are you crazy? This is brilliant. This is great. It doesn't even matter, if nobody else reads it. This needs to be out there, right? Like, people will read it. You have this faith when it's other people's work, you have this faith that
Right. Right. Yeah.
because even if it's one person, even if it's just one person that read it and went, my God, this is exactly what I needed to read right in this moment, that has value. That has absolutely has value. But you can't tell me that when I'm full of self-doubt at 6 a.m. Like, I don't believe, right? So we need each other, right? We need other writers to just go, no, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Good job. Keep going.
I totally agree. So you said you were involved with an anthology, and you wrote a story for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that anthology and that story.
Well, the anthology didn't happen. There weren't
Okay.
submissions. It was an anthology for charity, which I thought was it's a really great idea, to get your work out there. If you can get into anthologies, or if you're part of even a group of readers, like if it's a mastermind or a critique group, or whatever the case may be, everybody kind of participates. It's that group, right? Like that support from other writers, that you can all practice releasing the book. So yeah, so it was a really good experience. It was a run at it. I have a short story out of it, and I'm going to recycle that short story. Like, I'm absolutely happy with the work that I did. And even though that anthology hasn't come to be, there will be another anthology, or there'll be a magazine, or I'll just put it up on my own as of yet to be released blog, like whatever it is, it'll see the light of day. And so the exercise was not in vain.
And that, I assume that was with Jay, correct?
Yeah, it was the Kiva.
And he does a lot of anthologies for charity, and he's been a big help for a lot of starting writers. So
Yeah,
I know there's a lot of other new authors that have been on the podcast and that listen to other interviews. Look up Jay Thorne, look up his mastermind, look up the services he offers. We're both
absolutely.
in his mastermind group. You've got these plans for the year, and it'd be great to follow up in like a year and a half, and see where you're at,
Yes.
see what books you have out, how things have changed.
Yes.
But for this, what are some of your favorite books and authors?
Okay, so um, I I'm glad you asked, because I've just discovered T.J. Klune's writing. Someone suggested The House in the Cerulean Sea, and it was an amazing read. It was a brilliant read. I was captivated from beginning to end. So check it out. TJ Klune, The House in the Cerulean Sea. It's a fantasy / romance book, but it's got philosophy in it. It's got it talks about inclusion. It talks about feeling like you're the odd person out and you're never going to fit in. It's just got everything. I love that book. So that's my latest
Nice.
read. Yeah. I also have been really getting into this, and this is more the sci-fi part of me, as I write soft sci-fi fantasy. Um, John Scalzi, like I just love his
Yeah.
stuff. And the interdependency series is just my best friend right now. Like, I find from Scalzi, like, he's one of these people that I like. I aim to write like him. Like, I wish I could be him. But he's very unassuming. Like, I find his writing to be really approachable, and it's an easy read. It's not. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not pretentious, right? Like it's just he's got swear words in it. He doesn't use big words. It's just like your best friend telling you what happened, to him last night, and so
Right.
I'm really, really enjoying that. It's given me kind of permission to be myself and to have my own voice in the writing.
And he wrote the Red Shirts book,
Yes,
which is a little comedy-ish, correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's been on my virtual book pile. I haven't
yeah,
gotten to it yet, unfortunately.
yeah. It's really good.
Uh,
And then
Continue.
Well, in terms of classics, so I'm a Neil Gaiman fan, which is probably not
Oh
surprising.
yeah.
Yeah, but like I don't know how many people have read this book. It's my favorite of his. It's called The Anansi Boys, and it's
Yeah. It's the kind of sequel to American Gods.
yes, yeah, yeah, sequel or prequel, I don't know, but it sort of takes
Yeah.
Anansi, yeah, takes him kind of out and sort of shows his backstory, and I love it, absolutely love it. It's hilarious. And the
Yeah.
audio,
I love his writing.
yeah, the audiobook is brilliant. Like the guy that reads it has amazing accent and voices, and yeah, it's really awesome.
Up there in the very cold north.
Yeah.
Are there any bookstores that you get to go to
So there is
that you
one.
like?
Yeah, there is one actually. And it's 2 hours north of here. So it's even more remote than I am, which is
Is that by car or dog sled?
right? Right? I think dog sled would actually be faster, to be honest, because you could just drive, like you could just go right over the frozen lakes, and more like
Right.
the crows fly. Um, but yeah, to know driving is about 2 hours away, and it's called Chat Noir. So black cat, basically ChatNoir. So their website is chatnoirbooks.ca, and it's my happy place. Like it is my favorite place on earth, because you walk in and it's floor to ceiling books, board games, and fancy drinks. Like that's all I need, right? Right in the middle of it, they have a fireplace, so you can sit all the way around the fireplace. They have board games that you can just take off the wall and try out before you buy. So you can go with your hot chocolate and you play a board game, and you've got your stack of books that you're going to buy on the way out seated next to you. I love that place. Love it.
That sounds great. If I ever make it up there, we'll have to
Yeah.
go visit.
Well, you should. It's worth it.
I will definitely try. All right. So hopefully we can catch back up with you in a year. I think this is really interesting and great that from the reader perspective, hearing about some books that are on the way and an author that is working on getting those out. It's almost pre-marketing to get people interested. I think that'd be great if we could follow up to see what the books are and the progress.
I would love that.
Great. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking some time to talk to us about your writing, your books. In the second half of the podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about mental health and writers.
Yes. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.